So how much do you really know about Benjamin Netanyahu, and why are people following his lead?
But I believe there can be no greater tribute to America's long-standing economic aid to Israel than for us to be able to say, we are going to achieve economic independence.
Nothing changed at all. Absolutely nothing changed. Why do we rely on this
Take
guy?
out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And the reverberations of what happens with the collapse of Saddam's regime could very well create an implosion in a neighbor regime like Iran.
I think if the Iranian people had their way, they'd be wearing blue jeans. They'd have Western music. They'd have free elections.
Benjamin Netanyahu says he is, in fact, still committed to a two-state solution with Palestine. Netanyahu had promised the day before re-election, when he was slipping in the polls, that if re-elected, there would be no two-state solution with Palestine.
Netanyahu released a YouTube video today accusing his opponents of bringing what he called huge amounts of Arabs to the polls to vote against his Likud party.
The right-wing government is in danger. Arab voters are going to vote in droves. Left-wing groups are bringing them in buses.
The breaking news out of Israel right now, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just issued a formal apology to Israel's Arab
In a highly embarrassing slip-up, the French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been overheard calling the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a liar. Mr. Sarkozy made the comment during a conversation with the American President Barack Obama at the G20 summit in Cannes last week, but has just come to light. Mr. Obama replied by saying, "You may be sick of him, but I have to deal with him every day."
He says he speaks for all.
Yeah, I think it's a rather arrogant statement. I think the Jewish community is like any other community. There are different points of view. I think that arrogance does not befit Israel, candidly.
When George W. Bush had initiated the war in Iraq, if they had invited, let's say, the president of France to appear before Congress to criticize or to air those disagreements, I think most people would say, well, that wouldn't be the right thing to do.
Mr. Netanyahu decries the agreement as a bad deal and that we should wait for a better deal. Well, that is almost laughable, considering that Israel has spent the last 5 decades, 48 years to be exact, and have been unable to come to an agreement with the Palestinians, to the chagrin of the rest of the world.
Before the signing of the agreement in Vienna, has rallies presided over by the president, the so-called moderate president of Iran, in which they call the crowds chant, "Death to Israel," burned Israeli flags.
The clear implication is that these rallies somehow relate to the agreement, and that is a deception.
Iran can still be a place where thousands chant about the deaths of America or Israel or Britain. This was Tehran last Friday, on a march supporting Palestinian rights in Jerusalem.
Please note that this was a march supporting Palestinian rights in Jerusalem.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever.
At issue is Iran's nuclear program, a program Netanyahu's been issuing exactly the same warnings about for 20 years.
But ladies and gentlemen, time is running out. Now time is running out. Where's Iran? Now they're well into the second stage. And by next spring, at most by next summer, they will move on to the final stage.
Netanyahu's dramatic declaration to world leaders in 2012 that Iran was about a year away from making a nuclear bomb was contradicted by his own Secret Service, according to a top-secret Mossad document.
And this is a leader we're supposed to trust. Really? Well, here he goes again.
This attack and others' attacks.
Now we can add historical distortion to the list.
Were instigated by a call of the Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who was later sought for war crimes in the Nuremberg trials because he had a central role in fomenting the final solution. He flew to Berlin. Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews. And Haj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. You said, burn them.
Well, the man that Benjamin Netanyahu is referring to is Haj Amin al-Hussein, who you can see pictured there. He was the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem during the Holocaust. There have been passionate responses to these comments by Benjamin Netanyahu. Here's the Israeli opposition leader, Isaac Herzog, saying, "This is a dangerous historical distortion. I demand Netanyahu correct it immediately." He went on to say it minimizes the Holocaust, Nazism, and Hitler's part in our people's terrible disaster.